I have the great pleasure today of having a little conversation with Stefan Wolpers, who is, if you knew anything about Scrum or product, really focused on product development, you probably read his Age of Product newsletter. That's how I think I met you that way. I saw your Age of Product newsletter, and so for several years I've kept in contact with you, and you have graciously invited me to speak to the Berlin product people, and I have really enjoyed that. So I thought I would turn the tables on Stefan today and ask him just a few questions about his new book. Let me see if I can get this right. Um, the Scrum Anti-Patterns Guide challenges every Scrum team
Mhm.
faces and how to overcome them. So, Stefan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Johanna. It's a great pleasure, and I like the idea that we switch sides here. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's always fun.
because uh, uh, I talk a lot. So this way, you are going to have to speak with me. So let me ask you a few questions. Well,
Mhm.
did you want to say anything else about you before we start?
Um, well, I started chemistry a long time ago, but I never worked in a laboratory. I started developing hardware and software right out of university. I think it's 30 years ago. So I'm on the grayer side of the scale, and I've done that ever since, So I'm mainly self-employed. I'm not a good employee, So, yeah, Agile slash Scrum found me almost 30 years ago when I was working for a little startup. The developers had difficulties talking to the founder, which I didn't knew at the time, and they asked me would I would be interested in becoming a Scrum Master, and I thought, okay, how hard can this be, um, I'm with that part ever since.
All right. So tell me, first, who do you want to read this book?
It sounds like a book for Scrum Masters, but it's actually not. If you go through the chapters, you will see there are a lot of questions in there that touch a lot of different topics. So, for example, I have a whole chapter integrated for stakeholders and organizational questions. And by the way, the latter are spread throughout the whole book because the book has one structure. So there's an anti-pattern I observed, and I explain the anti-pattern, and then I start to think about, okay, why does it exist? I mean, there's always a reason why things exist. They don't fall out of the sky. And most of the time, I figured out, actually, it's not that stupid. Or no, let me rephrase this. It's not obviously wrong because there are scenarios in where this anti-pattern, I don't like to say makes sense, but is not as anti-patternish as you would think from the pure and applied perspective of the aficionado of the Scrum Guide, for example. Right. So, and this is the interesting conflict zone I believe the book is exploring. Okay, why are things the way they are? Why are people motivated to react in that way? Could there be good reasons why they react in that way? And what can you do about it? It's always a third part. How could you tackle this? What might be a good first step? And again, it's significantly more extensive to think about how to deal with these anti-patterns because they're not that obvious than you might think. So it's not as simple as, well, if the daily Scrum is running out of the time box, enforce the time box. It's probably not a good idea in the first place, but it's by all means not that simple. Okay, so I've been digressing.
So, yeah, so things get that way because of the system that people work in. And that's one of the things I enjoyed about this book, that it's all about um, moving from where you are to where things could be, and then moving back in. Um, for those of you who are listening, Well, I hope everybody is watching instead of just listening, because I did this thing with my hands that said expand the greater concept and then bring it back to the team. So it's yeah, I found that very interesting, that there are plenty of times when the system controls what the team does, as opposed to any of the best intentions of anybody, right? I think that that's really, you have your finger on the pulse of the organization, and that's one of the things that makes this book valuable. So did you have any specific actions you can advise for any given Scrum team? Or, and I'm really putting you on the spot, did you, are there, let me ask this question differently. Are there universal actions that you want the people who read this book to take?
Take your time and try to figure out first what is going on. So this is, I'm an introvert. This is the normal way I act anyway, you know. So being the mouse in the corner, observing what is going on, taking a few notes, talking to a few people, and trying to understand how the system is shaping the behavior of the people. And the second suggestion I have immediately follows suit. You know, don't jump to conclusions. You know, and there's always, you know, this is Kahneman system-ish, you know, there's an agile Kahneman system one, so to speak, you know, where you say, ah, this is wrong, and this is the reason, let's do it this way. Okay, maybe it works in 80–90% of the cases, but the hard ones are the ones when we're in which it's not working. And my suggestion always is try to trigger your Kahneman system too as a coach, you know, before you move into action. You know, I know there's a bias for action and you want to do something. And if you're new to a job or a project, you want to prove that you are the right hire, etc. But it takes time. And that's another challenge, because the people that are surrounding you need to be aware of the fact that it takes time. You know, so it's this classic, okay, you're 4 weeks on the job and it's still, you know, going astray. What are you doing all the time? You know, so classic issues that we as practitioners face all the time. And I like to help people getting out of this conundrum, you know, and finding a path that might work for them. Because as we know, what's working for company X is certainly not working for company Z, you know, because the context is completely different.
Yeah, that patience business. I have a little trouble with patience. And you've known me long enough to know, to see that in my writing. And when we've spoken, yes, we have discussed a little of my lack of patience. And I think that what managers are incented for is impatient frames of working, right? Managers are always focused on this quarter, which means, or even worse, this month or this week, which means the teams are also focused, have this very short-term focus. So having the patience and really figuring out what's going on in the system so you can do something about it. That's actually a huge, huge thing. And your book offers a lot of that. So let me do a little bit more questioning here. I really enjoyed the way you organized the book with all the various topics. And then you have, according to the Scrum Guide, which I really like, because that does say, here is what the Scrum Guide says. And if you are, I hope that your experience is different than mine, but a lot of the supposedly Scrum teams I see have never read the Scrum Guide. I mean, it's not long. It doesn't take a long time to read. It's pretty accessible, but they have never read it. They heard about Scrum or somebody brought it in, and maybe they had some training, but often the training is either just a little off or they self-trained, which is not bad if they had read the Scrum Guide. So I really like that. And then the anti-patterns, the food for thought, conclusion, and the toolbox. So I I really liked your idea of pre-mortems, which you discussed in How to Sabotage Scrum Masters and Product Owners at an organizational level. So the pre-mortem is a very interesting idea. Do you do a lot of those? And do you actually call them pre-mortems?
The latter question is an issue. So there are organizations that have a negative reaction towards pre-mortems. You know, this idea of, hey, I want my people to be motivated and accomplish something, you know, be successful. We don't want to talk while we are failing in the end, you know. So this is nonsense, you know, this is dismotivating. And so you have to repackage it a bit. You know? So like you bait the hook, feed the fish, you know. It's important that it's the bait is tasty for the fish, not vice versa. So what I tend to do is I rephrase it in the sense that, okay, we apply the principle of inversion, you know, as for learning, you know, and then you probably refer to some great gentleman from investments, you know, Warren Buffett and colleagues, and you probably have a better chance of selling the practice to other people. But in and of itself, it is amazing for a very simple reason. We can unleash our inner Darth Vader. You know, we can be bad. You know, so we're getting paid for being bad because it's all fictional, right? Nothing has happened. You know, no one is pointing at anyone. We're not dispensing blame here, but it's really just a precaution to think about, okay, what might go wrong? And more importantly, what can we do about it? And how can we prevent this from happening? So I do believe it's a very effective way of actually dealing with a lot of problems. And there are so many projects going on where you, in the end, may think, okay, they should have run a pre-mortem. They could have avoided easily these three topics, right? So, but apparently post-mortems are, for whatever reason, more attractive to organization. You first spend the money, then fail at your mission, and after that figure out why it happened, and then forget about it when you start over. It's always the same, you know, unfortunately.
Well, I find that a lot of organizations have typical for them risks, right? That they often, I hesitate to use the word fail, although it feels a lot like that as an outsider. But I often see them have risks in very similar ways, regardless of how they organize the project, right? So Scrum is a terrific framework for organizing product-based work that you want to succeed, where you want to understand and learn as you proceed, right? That's the whole point of an agile and lean approach. So I really like Scrum for that reason. But I often find that managers create the culture, which is my shtick. But that organizations have sweet spots for how long a project could be, or how long they really need to plan in advance, or they think they need to plan in advance, right? There's all kinds of typical sweet spots and typical risks. And I have done a bunch of what you call pre-mortems, what I have called exposing your risks, right? What are things that typically happen, that happened in your most recent 2 or 3 projects, that if you had realized, you might have done something different about? So that's one of the reasons I really like the idea of a pre-mortem, where we say, huh, what have we done in the past that we could already learn from without having to get that particular experience again? Yeah.
Yeah, you should avoid paying twice for the same information. and the same learning. Apparently there seems to be a budget for exactly doing that. Although it's not officially labeled as such, but companies are spending wildly on this.
Yeah.
It's always puzzling me.
Yeah. So there are a couple of challenges I wanted to pursue a
Mm-hmm.
little. Um, I run into a lot of component teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scrum is built on the idea of one cross-functional team with all the skills and capabilities that the product needs, right? That's what we are supposed to do. However, I suspect that you, as I, have run into component teams with silos, right? So the UI people are their own silo, and
Mm-hmm.
worse, they get loaned to the team, or the same thing with the platform, with the middleware, whatever. And it's even worse when those functional silos are distributed across time and space. Um, so, and this is a management and a team problem that combines several of your anti-patterns. So,
Mm-hmm.
which challenges do you feel that those, which anti-patterns are those, and how do you deal with them?
Mm-hmm. Well, the general problem I have encountered with these setup that you describe is always that the first inclination of a lot of people is to apply ointment where surgery is needed. And that is a classic issue. Of course, yes, we could patch the little things here and there. We could make it more comfortable, for the teams to work with each other. We could maybe reduce a bit of communication errors and stresses, and maybe we even get a hold on dependencies, make them less severe by just talking more to each other, right? But this is, I wouldn't say cosmetic, but it's not touching the underlying system. Culture always follows systems. And if you do not change the system, any hope that the culture will now be agile is more or less a waste of effort. Nothing will happen. People have certain incentives that are manifest, and they will follow these incentives. It's like Charlie Munger. No? Never ever think about the power, or always think about the power of incentives. I'm butchering the quote here, but figure out, show me the money, what this is all about. And the moment you start to look at systems in that way, you find it significantly easier to understand, okay, what are the main drivers here at play that keep us from actually living up to our potential, and where might we possibly go, and where might be a chance to actually work on these. But honestly, most of the time I failed to leave any significant impact at a system level. People simply do not listen to you as an individual, particularly not if you're an outsider, right? So if your email address starts with an ext minus first name, your your reputation within the organization is immediately limited. You'll be gone in 6 months anyway. So why should I invest in building a relationship with that individual? Well, it's very challenging. So the book offers a lot of advice on for applying ointment at the team level. Make things more bearable. But the system level is significantly harder, and there's no rule book that you can apply here. So many different aspects play into this. Politics, personal agendas, investment in existing networks, career perspectives, everything you name. So I mean, I'm not surprised that it is this way, because organizations were designed to be resilient. You don't want them to falter under the slightest pressure, right? And so why do you expect that that you as a coach can change them easily? It's I like to say it's not a bug, it's a feature that it's hard. It's supposed to be that way. And you need to team up with other people. And then you need to actually pitch this to the highest level, and because without support from the higher echelons, you won't go anywhere. And then the hard work starts, like explaining the benefits to everyone, and answering the classic question: okay, what is in for me? Why should I support this? Is this a fad or a trend? You know what? I will just sit back and watch for 6 months what you're doing here. And after that, I will decide whether I chip in or not. Then you have the refuseniks, the die-hard naysayers who have a vested interest in the status quo and who will not move. On the contrary, they will do everything to make you fail. So thinking about how can I sabotage someone is also an exercise in exactly that purpose. Figure out what other people might do, what ideas they might have, and then prepare for those. It's not about having a perfect plan. Those will not materialize anyway. As was it Hammond von Moltke, the older, no better plan survives the first contact with the adversary. This is not the case. The point is that you need to wrap your mind around what is going to happen and what kind of endeavor you're facing and the magnitude of the endeavor and how long it will take and the patience and the effort, and that you will experience so many frustrations before you make progress, so that you can ask yourself, am I willing to do this? Or it's an alternative. Shall I say, hey, I'm totally fine with a team level tactical role. I book some meeting rooms, I schlep the microphones and the cameras around, and I order stickies, and I organize the team breakfast, and I get a decent paycheck for that without killing myself.
Well, and I
That's the
I
question.
really think that you hit the nail on the head there. What's in it for me as a change artist? Because a Scrum Master is a change artist. What's in it for all the other people in the organization? Is it worth my paycheck to try and do anything about this system? If I explain to senior management and to middle management, is that good enough? And I really think that um, the business of ointment versus surgery is a very interesting perspective. Well, because I think it is good enough for many organizations to patch over the underlying causes of why they are not working to the best possible effectiveness, because most organizations don't need the best possible
Hmm.
effectiveness. Most of us, and I include myself because I'm a small business, as you are, most of us only need to be a little bit better than
Hmm.
most of our colleagues. We don't need to be the best. And I think this um I am not capable of not searching for perfection. But one of the things I have to remind myself is that my clients almost always cannot afford to search for perfection in everything. They have to pick and choose what they want to be perfect at. And maybe they want to be perfect at customer fit. Now, if they move from component teams to real cross-functional teams, they would find that fit faster. But is that even worth it for them? And I really think that what's worth it for us, what's worth it for the team, what's worth it for everybody in the system, and having patience and not
Hmm.
necessarily searching for perfection is often a good idea. But I really like the way you laid out the case for perfection in all of these anti-patterns.
Would like to see teams strive for perfection. And we all know you can't reach it. It's a bit like absolute zero. There's the thermodynamics of agility. It doesn't work this way. But at least you can give it a try. And if it doesn't work, well, you learn something, and maybe you made a bit of progress, and maybe the additional return on investment of this progress pays for a lot of other things. So I fully agree. It's not about finding perfection. It's about finding an equilibrium. Because my perspective is always that the system is sort of imposing a tax, and to keep it going. And you are ambitious probably to change the taxation system. And this is not something that a lot of people will be fond of. Most people don't know the system in the first place. Others who know it well and how it works, probably in their benefit, or have no interest in doing so. And so that is the interesting challenge. It depends on your personality. So personally, I like to try new things and see whether I can move the needle. But there's also a point when I say to myself, okay, you try to move the needle in 5 different times and they're not listening. So will you continue working here, or will you go somewhere else? And I fired myself for more than one project. And so it was interesting. Why are you going? Haven't we paid your invoice? And then, no, everything's fine. Shall we raise the fee? I said, no, I'm fine with my fee. Yeah, but why are you leaving? Everything is working. I said, see, this is what we're talking about. Yeah, I can't add any more benefits at the moment. So I tried a lot of things. It doesn't work here, not in the current system and the setup. And I believe that you're paying too much for someone ordering stickies.
I actually frame it a little bit differently, where I often say to my clients, um, I have done as much as I can do for you right now.
Yeah.
I am not capable of doing more. You have a great system. It's working for you. That's fabulous. Um, I am impatient and would love it if you could take the next couple of steps. However, you have proven to me you are not ready for that. When you are ready, let's talk again. And I
Yeah,
have
let me
had
know.
really great conversations with clients and ongoing clients where they come back to me a year or 2 or 3 later and say, huh, I remember that last conversation we had. We think we're ready for this next thing. And I have found that to be a really hopeful um, way to end a client engagement. So they're not thinking, oh, she doesn't like us anymore. No, they're thinking, ah, Johanna's off to run another marathon somewhere else. Right. And that for me has worked out very well, where I leave them with um, a hope that there is a
Yeah.
potentially different future. Because that's what your book is about, right? Your book is all about a potentially different future. Um, I had one more question that I really wanted to
Mhm.
ask you. Um, I recently worked with a team who did not do a retrospective every sprint, mostly because they finished nothing. But they had nothing to demo. They had
Mhm.
nothing to show for the sprint. So they
Mhm.
said, well, we didn't do anything. We didn't finish anything. Why should we do a retrospective? And I said, that's exactly why you need to do a retrospective, because you didn't finish anything. Um,
Absolutely, yes.
and where are things falling apart? Why are things so bad that in 2 weeks you cannot finish anything? Right? What is the problem? And if we don't examine it, if we don't shine a light on it, how can we actually ever know? Of course, they looked at me as if I had several heads or something like that. So, what do you recommend in this situation where people I would not say that they were resistant to the idea of a retro, but for them, a retro was about what they had accomplished, not their process. How do you deal
Mhm.
with people like that?
Well, depends a bit. I mean, if they're using Scrum, for example, I would try to help them understand, okay, what you would like to do here is have a sprint review, right? And by the way, sprint review is not about showing off what you did, so you deserve a paycheck, right? It's about having a conversation with your stakeholders, which includes our customers, about our trajectory as a team. You know, is the current product goal still useful? Should we continue pursuing it? Or have we learned something new? Has the market changed? That we should reconsider where we're trying to get to at the moment. So this is the purpose. If if you can't show anything, okay, that's information too, and we should talk about this because I believe we should be transparent about our progress toward our stakeholders. You know, I mean, normally in the usual operation, they are funding us as a team. So they deserve that respect, right? And by the way, maybe they have some ideas how we can overcome this situation. So we like to learn from them. At the team level, of course, we like to have retrospectives, but then again, it's a question of is the retrospective considered to be useful for them? Is it a good investment of their time? And if they believe, man, we've been working as we've always been working, and we try to change problem X so often, never happened, never materialized. We started it three times we failed. Why should you have a fourth discussion about this topic? Then probably you should go a step back and try to figure out, okay, what happened in the past? What kind of negative experience have they made? Has there ever been something where they considered something to be far from perfect, and where they decided to improve the way they were working, and it actually worked? You know, how was that different from what they're doing today? Is it the team composition, different people, different approaches, different manager? I don't know. I have to figure that out. And by all means, I would start to collect information beforehand. So I'm a big fan of anonymous surveys. So, for example, at the end of the sprint, I really love these things. Simple questions like, okay, how would you judge the value we delivered this sprint? Simple like that still, 0 from 10. So sort of value NPS, something like that. I know a lot of people have a negative attitude towards NPS, but at this level, totally fine, quick, simple, and easy to understand. The same. Okay, how is our platform developing? You know, I mean, business agility comprises two sides. A, you need to know what the next big thing is, and B, you need to be technically in a fashion that you actually can accomplish this. You know, it doesn't help to be good at one. You need to have both to make it work. So technical excellence is and a high quality product. It is really the foundation of any successful team, and you should keep track of that. So how is that developing? You know, is our platform deteriorating? You know, maybe because we cut some corners, because other people put some pressure on us with ludicrous deadlines or so. What I always like to ask is whether people would consider suggesting an open position in the organization or even in the team to a good friend. You know, bring a bit of social stuff in there, and I also always ask people, okay, are you having how do you feel at the moment at a professional level? You know, is this the time of your life, or are you already looking for a new job? And if you do this anonymously, and if you track the data over several sprints, you really get trends. And if you combine that, at least I do this with a personal diary, what happened when? You actually can start spotting trends quite early. So based on that data set, actually you could steer the retrospective into a direction where you believe, okay, this is an emerging trend and we need to talk about this. And if you can show and share the data, for example, teams will be immediately more motivated to actually consider this to be a beneficial endeavor, a beneficial an investment of their time. Because now it's not just how do you feel, now you have data. And if you have data, even if it's qualitative data, it's so much easier to talk to the management level about what is going on. So a lot of people at the management level need to have reports and graphs. And this simple exercise doesn't take a lot of time. It's a simple Google form or a Microsoft form or whatever form system you use. It provides the data, and it's really very, very helpful. So again, a small detour, trying to understand the ways how they are, how the system is feeding this trend, what might be going on at a team level, team composition, individual team members. You never know why this is, so a lot of different reasons. And I try to be as open as possible and understand as many angles as possible so I can help them in the best way.
I really like that approach because it's not from HR, right? This is of the team, by the team, for the team, with the team. And I I too often see HR surveys that try to get this information, but
Mm,
I have yet to find a really good um, trusted HR survey. But this is the team's data, and they can see it, and that makes, in my experience, that makes a very large difference for how the team will actually fill it out and track it over time. So that's really great. Okay,
absolutely.
what else should I ask you?
See, I found this a very, very interesting conversation, So we touched ointment and surgery. So that was really it's one of my pet topics, particularly to help uh, junior Scrum Masters understand what they decided to do in the future, and agile coaches and whatever you like to call them, because it's just this fallacy to believe that okay, if you know the Scrum Guide, you can do this, and this is absolutely not the case. I do believe you need to have a lot of experience. You need to have to develop products yourself, which is really helpful, and you need to have a good understanding how organizational structures work, how systems work, how you may influence this. You need to know a lot about communication, how to communicate to people, how to build rapport with people, and a lot of different tactics. And so, by all means, I do not believe that this is a junior job. So, whenever I'm in Reddit and I read something like, "Hey, I'm finishing college and have a job offer as a Scrum Master. What do you think? Should I take it?" So, no, probably start somewhere else, because you will not have a lot of fun with the role.
Well, I'm gonna take our conversation a little bit off your book. We will come back to your book at the end. But this is one of my pet peeves. I do not understand how a person can successfully live and work in a facilitative role if they have never done the work, right? The way I think about project management, it's all about a facilitative role. A scrum master is a facilitative role. A coach has to be a facilitative role. If you have never done product development, how can you take, how can you actually be in a facilitative role and offer value? I do not understand this. So, yeah, sorry, I intruded on our
No, no,
conversation
no, no.
about your
I
book,
fully agree.
but this is one of my very pet peeves. This is why I do not understand what a junior Scrum Master is versus
Yeah.
a middle Scrum Master versus a senior Scrum Master.
Yes.
I understand um, project and program managers because the scope of the responsibility is different. And if you say a regular Scrum Master is project and one product focused, I understand that. And a senior Scrum Master might be focused on the portfolio and facilitating the leadership conversations in management. I totally understand that. I'm not sure why we would call them a Scrum Master, because I'm not sure a senior Scrum Master facilitates any Scrums. That's a different problem. Maybe we just need a different word for a more facilitative senior role. That's fine. But a junior Scrum Master, I don't get that at all. Okay.
Oh,
And
wow. I fully agree. It's like internships for agile coaches.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me just say this. If you are a junior Scrum Master, or you find yourself as an Agile coach, and you don't feel as if you have a lot of product development experience, say at least a decade, before you move into
Yes.
a more facilitative role as a Scrum Master or an Agile project manager or an Agile coach, read Stefan's book, because that will help you see how all the pitfalls you might encounter. And as I'm not sure if you said this in our conversation, or you said it in the book, or I'm putting words into your mouth, but things got this way because they got this way. It's all the system, and how we can work with and against the system is a measure of our facilitative strength.
I fully agree, Anna.
Okay.
So much more than the 13 pages of the Scrum Guide.
Yeah. So what else? Where can people find you? What else do you have to offer? You do a lot of classes. Tell people where they can find you. I will also put the links in the description below and all that good stuff.
Um, I believe that the simplest way is that you search me on LinkedIn, or that you Google me. So now that I'm a published author, I was awarded the book box by Google, so it makes me relatively easy to find on Google. And you can also Google Scrum Anti-Patterns Guide, and then you will automatically come to me. And yeah, I hope that you will enjoy my newsletter. So I put a lot of work into this. And I still like it. Edition 439 will be available on this weekend. So I'm really looking forward to that one. There are some really good lemons this week. So I'm really looking forward to that. So for those who don't know, the lemon category is one post I find particularly challenging from various perspectives, because it's nonsense that I explain in there. And I like to point to that, as an example of what you should avoid doing, thinking, or practicing.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for this conversation. I hope your book becomes a bestseller and that all good things happen.
Thank you so much, Joanna. It was a great pleasure.